Welcome. My name's Serafin. I'm the Director of Operations for Equity Smart Home Loans. We're a mortgage broker in Southern California, and we partner with loan officers across the country to deliver the best remote loan officer experience that is available in the industry. And today, I'm so excited to introduce one of our newer loan officers. His name's Julian Nguyen. He joined us last year, and I wanted to spend some time with him, get to know him a little bit more outside the role of being a loan officer, and have you share your experience with our company so far. So, welcome, Julian.
Thank you so much, Serafina and team, for this opportunity to come on here and talk a little bit about my mortgage loan industry and what's been like here with Equity Smart.
A big reason for wanting to do this podcast was to bring the third dimension of being a loan
hmm
officer into the conversation, right? Being the human behind the role.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to ask if you can share a little bit about your experience before you became a loan officer.
I love to. I love to. I definitely don't come from a traditional mortgage finance background. I grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm the proud son of Chinese immigrant parents. So being able to speak Mandarin and Chinese has definitely been something that has propelled my career in the mortgage industry, which I'll share more about later. I think my first interaction with real estate really had to do with from my parents.
Mhm.
They are super savvy, super smart, and very hardworking folks. And up until 5 years old, I remember we were renting in a very small, like 1 or 2 bedroom, like apartment, and then they actually purchased their first home when I was 5. I have a younger sister; she's 3, and that's their first journey into real estate.
Okay.
And I didn't realize how lucky I was at that time.
Mhm.
But I always saw the savviness, especially from my mom, about making right choices, making investments, not just in property, but in yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And that really helped me with my drive in school, and I ended up doing really well. First in my family, go to college. I ended up graduating from MIT with a degree in computer
Well,
science.
that's amazing. Yeah.
So that's like, yeah, how did you go from
Yeah.
MIT to an MLO?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
that's it was just one of those things that I didn't really know what I wanted to do,
Mhm.
but because of the environment I grew up in, I had really supportive teachers, really supportive parents, obviously. Got interested in very different parts of science, math, technology, programming, and so I ended up graduating MIT. Went to work as a software engineer
Okay.
for a company called Oracle.
Got it.
Oracle
Yeah. I'm familiar.
Corporation.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really big
They
company.
still call me sometimes, and they're asking me to buy their products sometimes
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
company.
the database systems,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the database, the cloud infrastructure,
Right.
and I got to work on the operating system side of things, did a lot of debugging, really utilized my degree. So I had to make sure my parents felt comfortable with me venturing off, right?
Mm,
Because I moved away from home.
right.
I haven't been back home for a while. I live here now in California, and I did that for about 5.5 years,
Okay.
and it was really good. I enjoyed being in front of a computer to a certain extent, doing the programming, problem solving, debugging.
Mhm.
But after a while, I realized, I love talking to people,
Yeah.
as you all can probably tell from all the trainings. And I transitioned to a tech adjacent role as a software instructor.
Okay.
Part of that role is to help folks become software engineers from non-traditional tech backgrounds,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, funny enough, I became a mortgage loan officer without a traditional background,
Right.
and before that, I was helping people transition into
Mhm.
uh, tech industry from non-technical
Right.
backgrounds.
Of course.
And so I did that, and still support folks in that capacity. But what got me into the mortgage industry really had to do with my own personal experience of purchasing a home
Right.
and going through that process from a consumer point of view. And my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, uh, we didn't have a bad experience, but also I wouldn't say we had a 5-star mortgage experience. And so at some point down the line, I realized this is something I kind of initially wanted to explore.
Right.
And so I did all the books, all the tests, all the study. Actually, so I didn't take the exam until a year later.
Really? That's so
Yes,
long, actually.
it
How did you make that
was. I
happen?
got all the 20
Yeah.
hours of
Okay.
training, and I don't know if I ever shared this with anybody, but I was scared.
Uh huh.
I was so scared of failing
Yeah.
and not getting it right on the first try. And I put the stigma on myself, obviously, but that pressure of like I didn't want to fail, that I held myself back. So the cost of inaction was great for me,
Right.
until at some point you realize if you want to really do something, you got to do something.
Right.
You got to be all in. And so I ended up just, a year later, a few weeks before the exam, I just prepped, studied, got into the right mindset, passed on the first try. And then I just happened to stumble upon Equity Smart Home Loans.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
that's amazing. How did you like find us or see us? Like, was it like an ad or?
It wasn't an ad. I was, we all talk about Googling and YouTubing. I actually stumbled upon Pablo's, one of his training videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how to price out a loan and how to navigate a portal
Mhm.
with one of our lending partners. And at the time, I didn't know he was the broker owner, but I was
Right.
just like, wow, this is really detailed, informative training.
Yeah.
This is that kind of environment support system I would love to try to find
Mhm.
if I were to join a broker shop, a mortgage company. The rest is really history. I
Yeah.
found that out, reached out to you all, attended Steve Kim's orientation,
Yeah.
and he was great for so many reasons. And I followed it with him, and it was just one of those things where my initial worry, after passing the exam, was like, how am I gonna break into this industry as
Right.
someone who has no mortgage
Right.
background, right? I'm the kind of person where I like to just sometimes be fully in control and know exactly how the
Mhm.
process works from
Yeah.
A to Z, nuts and bolts. And so I was worried that, okay, am I gonna find that
Right.
at the mortgage shop that I decide to join?
Yeah. No, I honestly worked out for the best. I think
Mhm.
you finding our company. You mentioned your testing experience, and I just want to like mention a little bit about mine because yeah, I'm operations director, but I'm also licensed as a loan officer,
Mhm.
and that was an intentional choice. It took me a while, but the funny part of that experience was that the day I was scheduled to take my licensing
Yeah.
exam, it was an online proctor test, and it was like still during the pandemic, and I was at home. My dad lives with me, so I was like, Dad, I need to make sure that like environment that's
Right.
suitable for testing, it can't be loud, all that kind of stuff, because they give you all that direction
All the
prior to that. Yeah,
rules and guidelines
right.
and
They want to make
warnings. Yeah.
want to make sure you're basically not gonna cheat or anything like that, right?
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, I'm all ready. I'm like, heart is palpitating, like
Mhm.
just like I'm
Mhm.
like, oh God, I've been working so hard at this. I'm an operations director. If I don't get it right the first time, what's that gonna mean? Like some all those kind of
Yeah.
mental things playing in my head.
Exactly.
And so, anyways, I'm getting ready for the test, and I kid you not, it sounded like someone was chainsawing through my hardwood floor, and I'm like, "What the heck is going on right now?" Like no joke. And funnily enough, the day before, a handyman came by because we had
Wow.
complained about it was I think winter. It would complain about the cold. So my dad failed to tell me that it was going to happen the next day,
Got it.
and they actually were sawing through my hardwood floor trying to put a vent inside of it. And I was mortified. I was begging the proctor. I was like, "Please don't disqualify me."
Right.
Like, I spent so much time preparing for this test, and they have like a moment where they go offline and they talk to the supervisor, and they finally, okay, yeah, we're gonna let you take the test.
Oh, that's
And for
good.
the first 45 minutes, it still went on. Like I had to reread the same question over and over like
Yes.
four or five
Yes.
times. So it is like it's a harrowing experience, right? Like sometimes when you're trying to get the license, because there's
Mhm.
all the mental things that go along with trying to make it happen, especially if you don't have like a strong connection into the industry,
Right.
right? There's a lot of unknowns there, but I think we all kind of have a bit of a story as to how we
Mhm.
get there, right? And I just thought it was a funny thing to mention, but yeah, sometimes life just comes at you, and you got to do the best with it you can,
Right,
right? So
being able to adapt, adjust accordingly.
yeah,
Yeah.
segueing into now your experience with Equity Smart. I mean, you were starting off more or less as a brand new loan
Yes.
officer, right? So
100%.
what would you say were like the most challenging things for you?
Yeah, it's I'm almost a year into the industry, which means almost a year with Equity Smart,
Right.
and I just the term imposter syndrome gets thrown around so much, and
Yeah.
and I think it's a valid term,
Right.
right? Because you're coming into this industry, haven't done a loan before, obviously, right? And so trying to build that trust, find other professionals like our realtor partners, our potential borrowers to trust you with one of the biggest purchase of their lives, it was probably one of the biggest challenges, especially if, understandably so, they want someone who's knowledgeable, who has experience. And so, again, I credit my recent success in terms of being able to accelerate so fast to Equity Smart because whenever things came up, whether it's different loan scenarios or understanding how the process works, how to make sure things close on time, the support system at Equity Smart was there 1,000%. And everybody from the marketing team, the
Yeah.
IT folks, director of operations, our broker owner, like VP of sales, Steve Kim, like everybody makes themselves available
Mhm.
and in very quick responsive time so that us LOs look great, look like
Right. Yeah.
superstars. And I've seen that. I've seen it where I run into issues or troubles and folks are just ready to step up and help out. And I think that's really what helped me overcome that challenge. Like people wouldn't know that I was brand new
Right.
because of the knowledge, the way I would talk about loans and the way I came across.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain level of like I want to be this person to these people,
Yeah.
but I feel like I don't have all the experience that would make me feel comfortable
Right.
being that person. And I mean, just speaking from my own experience, right? Got my degree in international relations. It wasn't in
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
I just knew that I problem solve really well and that I wanted to help. And so when I had this opportunity, it was a lot of like I gotta put in some serious work to really feel like I can be the person that um, I can be who I would want to receive this guidance from,
Right.
And so we try our best here to do that for our loan officers as well, because we know how it is when you're sometimes trying to get a deal or make an opportunity for yourself, right? So
You mentioned something really interesting about, your problem solving background, right? Like even though you didn't study, finance or
mhm,
economics or marketing or any of the, business related aspects of mortgage, you had that problem solving mindset. And I think for me, even though I didn't necessarily have mortgage background, I still had that problem solving engineering mindset, right? How do I put pieces together, inputs, outputs, looking up the documentation, right? That's the engineering world. In the mortgage world, it's like reviewing guidelines, understanding guidelines, asking the right questions. What are our constraints? What are the conditions we need to meet? And what are the different values, calculations we have to essentially comply by to make things work? And so I always say now that looking back, leverage on your background,
yeah,
right? Don't shy away from where you came from. Another interest of mine is acting, and that having that active listening, that empathy, and being able to connect with others. That's really what mortgage is all about, right? It's
yeah,
not just loan volume numbers and Fannie Freddie. It's
yeah,
really how do I build that connection, that relationship at a very human cellular level,
right.
to build that trust and connection. And
I
if
100%
yeah.
agree. It's something that Pablo brought up to me like years ago, and at the time I was like, yeah, like I I heard him, but I didn't hear him. If that makes
Mhm,
sense,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like he said like the best loan officers are not necessarily the best at the back end of structuring a loan.
Right.
They're the best one. They're the ones that are able to build a real connection with someone
Mhm.
and to impart this feeling of you can trust me.
Yeah.
And there is a certain level of like too much talk and not enough action will only lead your client to be more confused, right? So at a certain point, you just, I see that those really good loan officers are able to just really establish themselves as like a point of trust. And I've actually just having done a few loans myself, I've seen that like actually most borrowers don't want to know everything.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
just want to know that you're gonna take care of
Right,
it,
right. You're
right?
gonna be
Yeah,
available
yeah,
night,
yeah.
day, in
Right.
between. If they have any concern, they know that you will be the one that's picking up and not, some other automated line or anything like that. Because I've had folks ask me like, "Hey, are you one of those lenders that I have to call a 1-800 number and I
Right.
have to press 5 to talk to this person?" So I'm like, "Nope, you're gonna get me. You're gonna stick with me from start to finish, and afterwards too, to make sure you are taken care of."
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So I think since you've joined, right? I want to say you closed somewhere around how many loans? 5 loans?
5, yeah.
Okay, okay, good. So I
Mhm.
was right. And I've noticed out of those five, I think you've gotten the majority uh of those five with reviews, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
What do you think goes into like making that five-star experience?
Well, we were talking about trust,
Yeah.
and trust then builds off into several branches, right?
Mm,
One is knowledge,
right.
second is responsiveness, and third is care. And all those reviews have been consistent with the traits that I bring to every transaction. And not even a transaction in the sense of like, hey, we get this business done and goodbye,
Right.
right? um I try to I always, every time I speak to a potential borrower, I let them know like, hey, my job is to work for you, is to educate you, guide you,
Mm,
but also, if you're not ready, your own race at your own pace.
yeah.
I say this to my students too when I'm teaching in the software world. It's like, hey, don't compare yourself to the next person,
Right.
right? Maybe so and so borrower A was able to get that home. Why didn't I get it? And it just creates a lot of stress and mental blocks, emotional blocks. And so I go into every scenario, every situation, every conversation of being very very non-salesy, not
Mm,
trying to sell them anything, not trying to force them into something they're not comfortable with. And people feel that. They genuinely feel that because when you're bringing your real self, your authentic self, they can feel it. They sense it. They know that like, hey, I'm not just trying to bait and switch you or get you to do something you're not comfortable with. And I see that at the end result.
right.
The reviews I get are like, hey, Julian never made me feel pressured into do something I didn't want to do,
Yeah.
or he listened to me. He's
Mm,
When I told him I felt comfortable having like a checklist of what things need to be done throughout the process, he followed through with that, and
yeah.
he made sure I was on top of everything. There was never any confusion throughout the loan process from start to finish.
Right. So, it's easy to be an LO when you only have good news. When there's only like, hey,
Oh,
we got clean approval.
right,
We,
right.
good. We're clear to close. All that kind of stuff, right? But when we see difficult news,
Mhm,
right? A lot of times, I think as loan officers, we can feel a little, we don't want to be the messenger,
mhm.
right? How do you have those hard conversations?
I remember I had a coffee chat with a realtor partner of mine, and I asked him, "What are some of the things that you look for in your LO, in your lending partners?" And he straight up said, if it's bad news, if it's something that could potentially be a deal breaker for the loan, I'd rather you tell me early on rather than try to fix in the background without letting me know, without being communicative, and then things falling apart
Right.
at the end, and then you let me know, right? I'd rather you tell me early on, break the bad news, and we can try to figure out if there's a way to solve it together as a team. And so I bring that team mentality to every conversation, good or bad, right? So if it is a bad conversation or a tough conversation, I let them know, hey, I want to give you a heads up that the appraisal might be blah 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 blah, and this could be a potential blocker for us. But here's what I'm doing to try to overcome that.
Got it.
So I think if you approach every tough conversation with not just a, hey, here's what's going on, this is it,
Right.
but rather, this is what's going on, but here's also my plan B, plan C, plan D on what I'm planning to do if and when that's happening, or
Right.
if it will happen, or if it's already happened, here's what I'm doing on the back end, on the background to try to resolve the potential issue or the issue at hand.
That's good to hear, and I know that your clients see that and feel that because, I mean, it just shows in your reviews. I think you have, I want to say almost as much reviews as you have loans.
Yeah, have all been five
Yeah.
stars, and I'm very proud of that. But it's really like I mentioned earlier, when the problems come up, you know, mortgage loan officers, it's you don't have to feel or be a lone wolf, right? You don't have to keep the problems to yourself, suffer in silence. Every challenge that did come up, I always let the leadership team know,
Yeah.
and we would bounce ideas off each other, like, hey, can we try to do this, or like they, because they have more experience, they're like, hey, try this other lender in case that happens, because they'll be able to do maybe a escrow holdback or something like that in case some result, some challenge might come up. And it's just one of those things where the more open, transparent you can be with everyone around you, they'll feel that, and they'll know that you did your best, even if the issue in the end cannot be resolved for whatever reason. Um, they'll know you at least made that effort, and I think effort goes a long way in this
Right.
business.
Really, you are part of a team. I mean, we fulfill one part of that entire home buying
Yeah.
process. We play a role here, and in order for us to do our best, we also have to provide the mutual support to the other parties in the transaction.
100%. It's 100%. It's like a really, kind of using something from my acting world, an ensemble, right? It's
Hmm.
not just
Yeah.
trying to make yourself be the star of the show or the performance. Is how do you make everyone else around you look great,
Right.
including your realtor partners, the title settlement agents, everybody, even the, like you said, the other side, because you never know. If the loan closes, that means everybody goes home happy,
Right.
including the listing agent, the sellers, and the listing agent will remember you of being that person who was communicative the whole
Yeah.
time and making sure everything got done in a timely manner. And for me in particular, because I speak the Mandarin Cantonese language, they may not have a lending partner that speaks that language and may want to reach out,
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
that has happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. And I mean,
Hmm.
I have heard that from other loan officers that they'll reach out to the other agent, and they'll be like, how did I do?
Yeah.
And then just having some sort of in with like just a reason to speak to someone and show them who you are.
Right.
That's what I try and tell our loan officers, because we do have quite a few loan officers who are transitioning right from
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
in a more traditional retail or brick and mortar sort of operation where
Yeah.
they go to an office to now being remote. And so sometimes they feel a little uh, disoriented. And so one of the things that we talk about is, make yourself visible. Make sure you're talking to people.
Yeah.
Find an excuse to talk to someone and just show them who you are. And as long as you're like secure in what you have to offer and like not being too salesy, listening to what the actual
Right.
needs are, and providing that guidance, then you will find the people that you're supposed to find. It sounds like a little metaphysical or spiritual in that way, but it really is like I have a voice, I have a message, I want to share that voice, and people who are willing to listen, I think they will listen.
It's all about really being interested rather than trying to come off interesting, right? When you
Yeah,
have that genuine curiosity of like, hey, why are you trying to buy a home, or what are your goals with this home purchase or investment, and what are you trying to do, and how can I, be part of that journey with you, and not just a one and done.
right.
That really can bring things like I mentioned earlier at a very human connection type of way.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, the fact that a lot of our loan officers are working remotely.
One of the great things about being remote is that you have total control in the sense of when you start and when you end.
Mhm.
And one of the challenges of being remote is you have control
The
when you start
same,
and
yeah,
end, right? So
it's
you
very the
can
same,
you
yeah,
can start late,
yeah,
end early, or you can choose to start early and end late.
yeah,
And I think for me, it's just a matter of, you've been starting to do this with our loan officers, is that goal setting
yeah,
mindset,
yeah,
right? Of being very specific of what you're trying to accomplish, how you're going to do it, what are the steps you need to take to meet that objective and ultimately fulfill that goal. And I think starting with those goals really helps, right?
yeah,
Because that kind of helps you zoom in, laser focus on like, cool, if I'm trying to close this amount of loans this month or this year, or if I'm trying to build, n number of relationships with my realtor partners, you start from there and work backwards. You're like, okay, cool. So that means I need to attend this number of networking events, or I need to do these number of cold calls. And from there, you can really start placing those different activities throughout your day, throughout
right,
your calendar,
right.
right? If it's not written down, you're not going to do it. So
Hmm.
if you can start with that, of writing those goals down of those activities, that's going to help organically build out the structure for yourself.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I did realize that a lot of loan officers do skip over the goal setting part and they're just
Hmm.
like, I'm just gonna do the things, right?
Right.
And I think that's when I realized that yeah, there's a value in action, but if it's not really geared towards anything in particular, you're just kind
Hmm.
of seeing what happens, and you're gonna see that in your results, right? If it's
Mm.
and that's what I have been noticing, and that's why I actually started that planning for success series. Was just the whole idea of like, this is fundamental, but like let's take a step back and like think about where we want to see ourselves. Just trying to really get clear about what we want for ourselves, so that way we're not dealing with this this feeling of just like drifting. What I
Mhm,
call it,
mhm.
like sometimes there's a day, it happens to me too. Sometimes it's not Thursday or Friday when it's like I got nothing in my afternoon. I'm like, "Nice." Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, "Nice."
cruise control time,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
like, "Nice." But then, you know, what keeps me honest to what I want to achieve is the fact that I wrote it down, what you said. And
Mhm,
that is so important because there's something about transmitting like a thought into an action that is like committed once you start writing it down.
Yeah.
It's not just like a floating idea. Now it's something that you put on paper and you're looking at it, right? And there's some like internal pull there
Mhm.
that's like it's quite you can feel it if you pay attention. You definitely feel it if you put it down and then you avoid it.
I
It's
mean, it's staring at you, and, in order to
yeah.
cross it off, you actually have to execute, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. So it was one of the things that like I wanted to do with our loan officers, so that way they can get a better sense of, okay, yeah, I've been doing these things, spinning
Mhm.
my wheels. What have I actually been doing?
Right.
Have I actually been doing what I said I wanted to do? So
Mhm.
it's a little bit more reflective, but it's been good. I think last time you were there in one of our sessions, you actually made a phone call
I
with
made a phone
yeah.
call. I made a phone
How
call.
did that go?
It was great. It went well, and it happened to be a realtor partner slash martial artist friend that
Yeah,
I trained with many many years ago, and I've been meaning right.
yeah,
I've been meaning to call. I've been meaning to
yeah,
reconnect,
yeah.
and it's so funny until someone is facilitating and encouraging us to actually do it in real time. You're like, "Oh, I'll get to it later," right? That
Right.
procrastination always happens. It creeps up to the best of us, and when I finally did it, I was so scared that I would either A, be rejected, right?
Mhm,
That
mhm,
fear of
mhm.
failure, rejection, or B, just be brushed over,
Right,
brushed off. And none of that happened,
right.
right? Every time we think the worst case, when we actually do it, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. They
Right?
they remember me. They actually like me. They want to have a conversation with me.
Yeah,
And so we're doing really well, and we'll catch up soon
that's
and
good.
go from there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think what I really like about just being in this position, and just being in this company, honestly, is that we are able to create space in
Hmm.
different ways. There's the very well known just like call 9 to 5. I remember when I first came in the
Yeah.
industry, it was just like, here's your desk, there's a phone, make something happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was a marketing coordinator, and like I told you, I had no background in business or anything. So like
Yeah.
trying to do that, I was like so freaking disoriented. So it's very easy for people to latch on to things that they feel might lead them to somewhere, but
Hmm.
without having testing those things. And having had that experience, I realized that what I really was missing, because I was a hardworking, talented individual. What I
Hmm.
was really missing was someone who could just give me some inkling about what I could do to like direct my effort,
Right.
right? Because I tell people this, if you're gonna spend the best parts of your day working, like just committed to like making something happen, then I hope it's worth doing.
Hmm.
And so that's what I was doing at the time. I was like, I hope this effort is worth it. And finally, like after I realized like no help was forthcoming, I was like, I gotta be that guy. And so I was able to get myself to a level of like knowledge and competency to be able to start scaling up from there.
Mm.
It's hard, but when I got into this role, what I really cared about was creating space for people to like collaborate, be together, and really be able to start to learn from each
Yeah.
other, right? So, like since you've joined, we've continued to make more progress in that way,
Yes.
right? Wanting to like continually make space for loan officers that maybe need a little bit more help with the goal setting, maybe need a little bit more help being accountable, or just going out and speaking to people, building relationships.
Right.
And it's so good to see that what we have made here, is just not just reciprocated, but I can see you also do it at with your clients and with other LOs that you interact with.
100%. And that safe space, right? That you've been fostering for us really then floods over to our, like you mentioned, that day to day when we're talking to our borrowers. And sometimes they might feel like, oh, I don't want to ask a silly question to my loan officer because maybe I should already know it from a consumer standpoint,
Right.
right? But obviously they wouldn't because they
Yeah.
haven't bought a home yet if they're a
Right.
first time home buyer. And so for us as loan officers, being able to ask those questions, create those goals, maybe get some feedback on whether our goals align with what we're trying to accomplish is just really gratifying. And when we feel that support as loan officers, we want to strive to work that much harder, right?
Right.
To
Yeah.
make everyone around us grow.
Yeah. When it comes to the skills that you
Mm.
find like most useful in this position or in this role, I mean, what would you say are the like things you really want to work on? Make sure that you're able to put your best foot forward.
Yeah, I I have this acronym I made up a while
Okay.
back.
I love homemade
Yeah,
acronyms.
home name acronyms. Keep it hot.
Okay, keep it hot. Yeah,
Humility, ownership, and tenacity.
I love that. Okay.
So humility has to be with, striving to be a learn-it-all, not a
Yeah.
know-it-all. Especially when it comes to the mortgage industry, where things are constantly changing, right?
Right.
Guidelines are changing, regulations are changing, laws are changing, and so just being open to all of that is very important. And I think that's a skill that I think I've really latched on to,
Uh-huh.
especially when I first came in. I was thinking like, okay, I'm only gonna figure out, how to do conventional loans, right? The
Right.
purchase side, and that's it. Refinance, maybe that might come back, maybe that, will never come back. Doesn't
Mhm.
matter. I just want to focus on purchase. And then when I stepped out of that and started learning more about, different non-QM programs to help, non-traditional uh, income earners, I was like, wow, this has been great, because now when
Yeah.
I'm in open house, I'm able to speak to that. When someone
Right.
asks about, hey, do you have different programs for investors that don't require certain blah 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 blah, I have that already in the
Yeah.
back of my mind because I stayed open to learning about these different loan programs.
Right. Definitely.
And so I think that's really important. Ownership is an important skill. It came back to what we were talking about when it came to goal setting,
Yeah.
right? Did I honestly do what I need to do today to move the needle forward?
Right.
And if the answer is no, because I was off doing something that was not moving my needle forward, then I got to be honest with myself,
Right.
right? And having that objective mindset of like, cool, I didn't do my open houses this weekend, or I didn't make my 10 calls today to try to form new relationships.
Huh.
Why was that? What do I need to do differently moving forward? So taking extreme ownership of that, I think, has been really helpful for me. Because I'll say there have been moments where I didn't have my phone near me. A realtor called me wanting to go see a property with a potential borrower. I didn't pick up, or I wasn't there, and it ended up going to another loan officer.
Dang.
And so I took ownership of that, and I always have my phone close to me when I can, moving forward.
It burns.
Yeah, it burns. You just remember that, right? You
Yeah,
remember more
yeah.
of the not necessarily mistakes, but the losses than the wins, and
Yeah.
you try to
Yeah.
learn and grow from that. Yeah. And then finally, just that tenacity, right? Being persistent, staying consistent, and just making sure that, understanding that no is just a not yet, right?
Yeah.
No is just a not yet. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not interested. Okay, cool. If you're not for now, I'll follow up, a couple weeks from now, and keep you posted on if markets change, if any new loan programs come up that might be more suitable for you.
Definitely. I like all of that, honestly, and we might steal it. So
Keep it hot.
Yeah, keep it hot, guys. Keep it hot. But I love that middle piece right there. I mean, the being open, humble, I think is so important. I honestly, that was the first part. Um, it relieves you from having to be a know-it-all if you just are very transparent and say, hey, like I am your person. I'm the guy that's gonna help you
Hmm.
get from point A to point B and all the way in between. But I don't also know everything in this industry, but I do have everything I need
Right.
to deliver the right and the best experience I can. And I honestly find that like people are mostly like they're like, yeah, I get that.
Hmm.
I'm in. The other part that I think I really liked is just this the ownership.
Yeah.
It that idea of like locus of control moving from external to internal is so important because a lot of people look to the external and they think that, oh, the reason why something didn't happen is this, something outside of themselves, some sort
Mm.
of like something other than them. And when you really own it, when you own this experience, when you own what you're doing, you just have to like actually be honest with yourself and say, hey, no, that was me.
Yep.
That was me. What part did I have to play in this thing happening or not happening?
Hmm.
And honestly, if you own your your work and see it, I think, as a symbol of like who you are and like what you want to provide, um, then people respect that, they reciprocate, and they're like, okay, this person, they take it the extra mile. I know that Julian has the hot acronym.
Right.
that,
Right.
you know,
And the thing
you
is,
know?
people are always
Yeah,
expecting finger pointing, right?
got it.
When something doesn't go well, they're going to expect that, the other party is going to come back at them and say, yeah, it was your
Yeah.
fault. You were too slow. You didn't respond fast enough.
Mhm.
But then when you are the LO takes that ownership and said, hey, listen, I didn't order that quick enough, or like
Yeah.
I should have like that was on me.
Yeah.
It's such a fresh breath there. They're like, wow, I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that from you. I was expecting like, some sort of finger pointing, some angry email, some angry response to come at me, but instead you're taking ownership. You're finding ways to remedy the
Right.
situation, I I dig that.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that, and I want more of that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
attracted to that, and I wanna, maybe things didn't go well this time, but we got it fixed. Let's figure out a way to work together again on the next one because I know that you're gonna take ownership of it regardless
Definitely.
of how things go and make sure, everything gets done accordingly.
Yeah. I think it promotes that like the honesty, right? The
Mhm,
actual
mhm.
like, okay, like this is what happened. It didn't go the way I thought it would, but like I'm working on it already, and it just promotes that like sense of like, okay, this person this has integrity,
Yeah,
because
that's what it
I
is.
mean we all say it, but sometimes I think that it's lacking something when it
Mhm,
comes to like some transactions, and so that's why for us it's like one of the most important things that we can do because sometimes you know, we're not at the company level, right? We're with our loan officers, so we're not having the conversations with borrowers so much, but we have conversations with our loan officers, and
mhm.
we because and sometimes they're not the easiest conversations because we're liaising with lenders or third parties,
Right,
and that has an impact as well. But we're humans, we're people, and we're gonna deliver the news, but we're also gonna be there every step of the way because it's not like a drop a bomb, leave kind of thing.
right, right. We can
So
always do it gracefully.
right,
Yeah.
right, right, exactly. Um, okay, so I wanted to ask now that you've already hit, I think, the goal you initially set out for yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. I remember I was chatting with you and
Uh-huh,
said,
yeah,
2024, try to close 4 loans by the end of the year.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what's our new goal now?
New goal, I I love to try to hit another 4.
Uh huh.
But in addition to being a loan officer, I'm about to assume a new role of
Mm-hmm.
being a father,
I
of being
know.
a dad. So I'm being more realistic,
Yeah,
with myself, with my family. But
yeah.
again, what I love being about loan officer is not just doing the loans part,
Hmm.
but that mindset part, right? Um, I was chatting with Steve the other day, and I realized sometimes we try to convey the idea of like, hey, we want to treat our clients like family,
Right.
and I've recently reoriented that perspective and have thought of it as treat my family like clients.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is we when we're chatting with family, sometimes we're just so impulsive with everything, right? We don't necessarily think before we speak. We
Mm-hmm.
sometimes say things we shouldn't say. We're not as patient,
Right.
and so that sometimes creates not so great relationships.
Got it. Yeah.
But when I recently tried to change that perspective and treat my family like clients, all of a sudden I'm more patient when I'm on the phone with my parents. I'm
Yeah.
more communicative with my wife on certain things and providing, transparency on everything. And like, hey, I'm gonna be able to do this, I'm not gonna be able to do that. And so now in as I look through the rest of 2024, yes, I wanna, try to close additional loans, but at the same time, about to be a parent, I'm more realistic. I've gotten more grounded, and again, just looking at folks from a client lens, I'm just trying to, just have that raw honesty with every interaction I have, every relationship I'm building, and I think it's nice to see how that professional and personal has intersected in a very just a nice empowering way.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think that's I love that overflow effect that
Yeah.
happens when you're in this industry. People think I mean, just to say it like this, the reason why we really love this line of work is because work can like the right type of work with the right environment can be a medium for actual self-improvement.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be stay contained in this like little cell or cubicle,
Hmm.
of like professionalism. In fact, with the right people around you, you can actually use work as a vehicle for like real change. And I've also noticed that too because I manage and direct large team,
Right.
and one of the things that really was, I guess, kind of hard to accept is that I had to let go of certain things. Sometimes it feels good to like, hold things like to heart, like grudges or pettiness or other things that like hold us back. But you quickly learn that if you want to be this person who is able to be compassionate,
Hmm.
understanding,
Hmm.
um, successful, and help others grow, and that's the key, helping others grow,
Right.
then you have to get to a point when you start letting go of things that are no longer really productive to fostering that environment, right?
100%.
And I've learned that one of the best things that we can do as leaders and you know loan officers to make sure that we are actively fostering that environment. So I'm just really glad that we got the chance to
Same here.
talk about all this today. I really appreciate you for just sharing, what it means to be a loan officer in general and with our company. It's been like an absolute pleasure just seeing you grow.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think that you weren't honestly honest and that you had much more experience in the back because no, I was joking. But it's a testament, I think, just to the the energy and the trust that you impart. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to, shout out obviously Equity Smart Home Loans, everyone here, for really creating an environment where every loan officer is celebrated, not just tolerated. So I think that's really what's going to help not just the organization, but every LO continue to thrive in their career.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Julian.
you.